Welcome again to this stay-at-home session for Intro to Substance Designer. This stream was made possible thanks to New Media Manitoba. New Media Manitoba is the sector council and nonprofit association serving Manitoba's interactive digital media industry. So this is an, oh, thank you, little blue robot. I'm going to cover that actually right now, which is that the first session that we did covered all of our UI basics, and we talked about nodes, we talked a little bit about workflow, we just got familiar with the software and where all the tools we need are. I think it'll be helpful if we kind of see it. Hey everybody. So yeah, we got familiar with all of these windows here. We talked about nodes and a little bit about workflow. I showed you some common nodes that I use. And then we kind of put them in practice on some basic shapes. So I think we're ready to get into making our first material today. One of the other things that we did go over last time, though, before we get started, one of the things that I showed was how to put together your own template to get started. And I don't know if some of you remember, but really late into the session, I realized that I hadn't set my normal intensity to be to what I wanted it to be. And in that same session, I had mentioned how if you don't set up your template, like you don't have it lined up the way you want, you don't have the settings the way you want, and then you make that template, you're just going to be making that adjustment at the beginning of your material every time you bring it in, and it becomes like less efficient. And I had that problem this week, so I was trying to reuse the template that we made together, and I kept forgetting to set up the normals properly. So I figured I'll redo that, fix it for myself, and then also it gives everyone who wasn't here last week an opportunity to make a template with me. So we're all on the same page when we get started. Oh, I see. Okay. Sorry, I just read the comment about needing to reload. Okay, so first of all, let's get going with a new substance. And I'm going to grab the PBR metallic roughness and give this a name like my template or something. I'll hit OK. So we've got all the nodes that we need here. And again, I'm just going to move all these down a little bit, because base color is fine there, but then we have roughness, which is the one that I want next, and then I want my metallic map, so I'm going to highlight that and put that here, and then normal is fine here, and before I even forget, I'm going to highlight that and set it to 25 right off the bat, and then I want my height. And then I want my ambient occlusion. I'm going to hit spacebar and grab a reroute. And by reroute, I mean dot node. My blender is showing. I'm going to plug that into the normal. I'm going to plug it into the height. And I'm also going to grab an ambient occlusion node. Plug that into the ambient occlusion. So this is going to convert our height information that we have into an ambient occlusion for us. So all this ends up being the same. Whatever our grayscale for our height is, will get plugged into the normal, we'll get plugged into our height, and get plugged into the ambient occlusion all at the same time. I'm just going to move this. Yeah, that's fine there. Okay. And then this is all showing up yellow because right now it's thinking for some reason that I want to plug in, I'm trying to plug in a color, and all of these inputs you can see here, I don't know why this one's yellow, but these inputs are expecting a gray input, so I'm just going to get it to update for me by taking this grayscale uniform color, and I'm just going to plug it in here, and now it's going to update all of these paths, and when I delete this, it will still assume that we're plugging in a grayscale map. Okay, so that is good. I'm going to go to my Explorer, and again, there was a couple of things that we had to do to make sure that we have this all set up for templates. And the first was in our preferences, or I guess you have to make a folder for yourself somewhere for your templates and copy that path for yourself. And then in projects, you want to go to, or in preferences, go to projects, general, and it shows you this template directories thing. And then you just want to paste. I was already there, so it didn't really show anything. Select the folder, hit apply. We can get out of here. So now it knows where to get templates from, and we can save this. And again, we're going to save it to that templates directory. So I'm just going to overwrite this one here because I already have it. Hit save. Sweet. And then now I'm going to, we can just close this if we want, create a new package, and this will be for our material today. So I'm going to call it flagstone, because that's what we're going to make today. And then we're going to look in the graph template directory here and look for my template or whatever you named it here. Hit OK. And look at that. It loads up the template we have. Double click the normal, and it's set to 25, just like we want it. Okay. So, like I said, we looked at a lot of common nodes and made some basic shapes as like in some examples before we finished off the session last time. So I'm just going to open those up again so we can take a look. So these are here, and we're going to see today that in like any given material, these really are like very common nodes. I'm pretty sure we will end up using every single one of these. So there's a few that we didn't get into, like mini examples when I was hooking all these things up to each other. One of them I believe was the distance node, and we're going to use that almost immediately today. Yeah. So I just kind of wanted to refresh your memory on these ones here. And then also, let's talk about what we do when we get started making a material. So whether or not someone's requested, you know, I want a particular, like I want a flagstone for something, or maybe you've been like looking through Pinterest or I don't know, your own photographs or your own vacation, and you see an interesting surface and you're like, I want to make that material. So in this case we have the flagstone. There's a process that I go through first. So like most art, you want to gather a bunch of reference. And for substance designer stuff, or when you're making a texture, not only do you want a bunch of reference to show the shapes and texture, surface texture that you want, but also grab yourself a few images that don't have as much lighting information in them, which will become important once we do the base color pass. Yeah, and then this here is the flagstone that we're going to be working through today. So this was me playing with the idea. It doesn't really have an in-depth color pass or a roughness pass on it, but just so you can see sort of what our target is for today. So as soon as I get my reference all sorted, the first thing that you want to do, or the next thing that you want to do, is start to break down that reference and find what components you want. Because really, just like sculpting something in ZBrush, you're kind of sculpting with height in Substance Designer, and you want to work with like your large shapes first, and then go to your medium shapes, and then your smaller shapes. So you kind of just want to identify those first, and then also maybe figure out what kind of different components you need. So in this case, I've decided that, you know, it'd be cool to make the flagstone, but like maybe we might end up with some foliage in there. So I know that I need to make these larger stone shapes. I know that I'm going to need to make a dirt here and maybe some pebbles for that dirt. And then I grabbed some reference for just like little plants that might be coming, might be growing in between these little stones here. And then, of course, some reference to just show me some of these larger shapes for wear, and then the smaller noise for like pitting and that. Okay. As far as these next two sessions go, so today we're going to be working through creating the height, as I said, and that will take a while. I mentioned in the first session that it's a good idea with Substance Designer to have your workflow be that you focus on the height and getting your large shapes and making sure that those read well before you start bothering with roughness pass and before you start working in your base color. Because the base color can become distracting, and it's one of the funnest parts of getting your material together, because that's when it starts to come really come alive and look real. But you can hide issues or things that might be missing detail-wise if you put the color in too early. So today we'll be working on the height, and then next week we'll look at creating the roughness and creating the base color. I will try to go at a decent enough pace so that you can follow along if you like. But because there's a certain amount to get through, and I do want you to be able to have like a full material by the end of these next two sessions, I think the rule that I'm going to come up with is that while we're getting warmed up and getting reacquainted with the software, I'm going to spend the first 10-15 minutes where if you have questions about a setting that I've done that you missed or something like that, feel free to ask me, and I'll keep an eye on the chat and try to go back. But after that, I think we just have to keep moving forward, and then this will be uploaded on YouTube later so that you can review. Because I don't not want you to follow along, but I also want you to be able to, even after, like once you are able to review the content, I want you to be able to feel like you've made a material at the end of these sessions. Does that sound okay? Oh, cool. I can become famous? I'm not sure if it's been uploaded yet. Hey, Albertine, do you know if it's been added to YouTube yet? Okay, I'm going to get going. So, we talked about these big flagstone shapes first. So to create that, there's a couple of things that we could do. I'm just going to set this to always on top so I can keep this here. We could use a cells node, which is already in Designer, already set up for us. It kind of gives us that shape. And we could play with the disorder or the scale or something like that. But there's a different way to get this sort of pattern, make it yourself, that I find is more flexible. So we're going to take a look at that method. So the first thing that we need for that is a tile sampler. There we go. And then, whoop, sorry. Cool. Okay, so tile sampler, and then going to adjust the amounts in the X and Y. This, I'll probably come back and change these multiple times. But this is fine for now, 10 and 23. I'm going to go to scale random, put that all the way up to the top, and reduce the scale by quite a bit, maybe like 0.5. I'm going to set the offset to 0.5. Then I'm going to go all the way down to color and turn on the color random. I also want a random rotation on all of these. I'm going to put a little bit of position random on here. And I think maybe I mentioned this last time, but position random can get kind of crazy really fast, and stuff can start overlapping. And we don't want these things to overlap yet. So I want to keep this low to something like 0.1, just so that they kind of jitter. And I think this is too much going on, so we're going to reduce. Maybe we'll start, what we got? X amount is at 4, Y amount's at 10. Yeah, and then I'm just going to do the size random. And we'll leave it there for now. And then I need a distance node. I plug it into both. And I need, so this one has like a mask input and a source input. So this is our source. The mask, though, we just need to be black and white. So I'm going to grab a histogram scan. And if I pull that position all the way up, it will give me a very contrasty map. And I plug that in. And so the distance node, as you can see, it sort of like expands the shape out. And it will, when I set the distance here, it will expand it out as far as it can until it like smacks up against another color pixel. So I want this to be like, I want the maximum distance on this to go really far. Like 256 is still not enough because it's hard to see, but there's kind of a gradient in here, and I just want like full contrast between these cells. So I'm going to set it to 3000, and that'll give me what I want. So now we're starting to see that cells pattern, but this isn't, I don't like that. So if I double click on distance and I click once on the tile sampler, I can still see the distance node output in the 2D view, and then I can edit the tile sampler. So let's start playing with these values. Six and 3 looks okay to me. Then I'm going to do, might add a little bit more like wonkiness in it. So I'm going to warp it with add a warp and a Perlin noise. And I'm just going to reduce the scale. You banned BF Style 07. How am I supposed to get famous? Okay. I'll never forgive you. That looks okay to me. Let's see. Maybe. Okay, I'm going to try something else here. I'm going to take this up to 4 and 8, but then I want to do a mask random. So that I could get like maybe a little bit smaller shapes and some bigger ones. Position random to 0.2. Okay, so I like that. The next thing that we need is an edge detect. So, the edge detect. So this is going to find the space between like different grayscale values and give us this edge here. So edge width I'm going to set to 1.5 for this one, and the roundness I'm going to reduce so that we get some that are pretty sharp. And then I'm going to create another edge detect, and this one I'm going to make the width like 2.5 and add some roundness here. And then I'm going to blend these two together. And I have these plugged in the wrong way, and I want to switch them. To do that, if I highlight both of these connections and I hit X, they'll switch. And for, I need a mask, so I'm going to, because I only want some of these larger spots in here. So I'm going to grab a histogram, select, plug that in. Oh, you're going to give me a problem. These little white lines. I might have to get rid of this warp. Yeah. I wonder if, sorry about this. I just don't want these little white lines here, and I'm wondering if the warp created it. So I'm just going to try putting a non-uniform blur here, and I'm going to blur it on itself. I'm going to increase the samples in the blades, and I'm going to just set it to like 0.5 and see if this helped. Oh no, it just made it made the lines better. Or clearer. Wait, 1 or 1. Yeah, never mind. I'm just going to get rid of the warp for now. And then I also don't want this. So if I want to plug all of this into this node here, if I hit Shift and select and then drag this over, it will bypass all that stuff for me. So sorry about that. I'm just going to delete all these and bring this back. So now our histogram select is behaving. I'm going to go for like a random range and then a contrast all the way up. Okay, let's start there. So I've got these two plugged in. I'm going to use this as a mask. And I'm going to go multiply, but I messed this up again. So I'm going to just select both of these and hit X. There we go. Now I've got those spaces that I want. And I'm going to plug this in to here so that we can start to see what we're doing. I'm going to change this to a rounded cylinder. And I'm going to go to Materials, Default, Edit. And I'm going to set our scale for the height to like 6. It's going to look bad for now, but we will fix that. Yeah, I might want more shapes. So I'm going to go back to my tile sampler and reduce my mask random. Yeah, I don't know, I just want more shapes to play with, so that'll be okay. Okay, so the next thing we need is a flood fill. So I hit the spacebar, flood fill. Oh, yeah, so I just took my output here and I plugged it into I made a dot node that is linked up to the normal height and ambient occlusion. Were you here for when we did the template setup? Do you have the same template? Because if you don't, if you just plug this, there's another way to do this. You can just create, oh, okay, cool. Never mind then. Okay, so we're going to plug this into the flood fill. And then there's a couple of things I want. One of them is flood fill to random grayscale and a flood fill to gradient. Oops. There we go. Got these. So the random, I'm just going to go to the gradient. I'm just going to increase the angle variation. And you know what? Looking at this is going to happen a lot, where I see something in the context of another node and I don't like it as much. This is a bit too wide for me, so I'm just going to go back to this edge detect, and I'm going to reduce the width to 2. So it got a little less extreme. Okay. Then I'm going to grab levels. I'm going to plug this black and white image into it, and I just want to bring up the white a bit. And we're going to blend all 3 of these together. So first, I'm going to do this, and I'm just going to bring the opacity back on it. And plug that in. So you can see what it's doing. It gives us that like different levels look. And so I'm just going to pull that back so that it's fairly subtle. And then we're going to do it again with this flood fill to random grayscale. Just going to add a blend. And that random grayscale is going to give us all these different angles. And again, I'm just going to pull it back a little bit. Cool. It's good for now. So oh no, really? It's echoing? Maybe I'm too close. Okay. I don't think so. No. Is it really bad? Yeah. Okay. No? Sorry, yeah, I just double checked to make sure, and I don't have Twitch open right now. Okay. Okay. Sorry, everybody. This is what you get for watching a newbie streamer. So we have these random angles. Thanks. So I'm getting my reference back. Okay. I want a little bit of a bevel on these edges here. I think I'm just going to go to my height. Materials. Oh, tessellation. I didn't turn tessellation on. Ooh, that looks amazing. So, sorry, materials. Then we go physically metallic roughness, and then change your parallax occlusion to tessellation. And this will open up scale and tessellation factor. And this tessellation factor, oh dear, those puns. Thank you. The tessellation factor I'm going to set to like 32 for the cylinder, and you can see it there. It like smooths it out a bit. But now for the actual like hard edge there, I'm going to bring back that non-uniform blur. And I'm going to grab this black and white edge detect blend. I like them. The puns are good. Sorry for all those people out there that don't like the puns, but I like the atmosphere. Okay, so we're going to increase the samples, increase the blades, and take the intensity down to like 1, which will give us kind of like a soft bevel. I'm going to add a blend, and then I'm going to multiply. There you can see the edges are a lot softer. And like depending on what kind of shape you want, you can make that larger or smaller, but we're going to stick with 1, maybe even 0.5. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there for now. And then for these big shapes, there's like a couple last things I want to do, and that's just break up the edge. So I want a slope blur, and then let's take crystal, plug that into the slope, which is on the bottom, and then I'm going to grab this again, these edges, and the samples I'm going to take all the way to 32, and the intensity is usually very low on these, so we'll start with 0.1 and see what it looks like. There we go. I'm going to, on the crystal, reduce the scale and increase the disorder, maybe? Sure. That looks okay. No, it doesn't. But this on the slope blur, we're going to take it down to like 0.05. And then it's on blur mode right now, and I just want it to cut in. So we're going to go to min. And then we've got these little chips. So again, we're going to grab our blend, that on top, and go multiply. I don't want this to cut all the way back, so we're going to play with our opacity. So that we have like some surface chips. I wonder what min darken looks like. Nah, I don't like it. Multiply it is, and then pull it back. Cool. And one last one we're going to do with like a clouds 2. I always resist it. I always resist pulling out another clouds 2, but I use it a lot. It's a good node. Okay, so that one, I'm just going to duplicate this slope blur, but I'm going to plug the clouds 2 in there. And I'm going to increase the intensity to 1. Maybe even 2. And then blend it again. Multiply, and pull it back. So we're just getting like a little bit of chipping on the edge. I'm just going to play with this non-uniform blur. And I think 0.75 works better for me. Just going to see if I can get more shapes. There we go. So putting the scale at 3 for the clouds. Okay, that's good for the chips for now. It's not even really the main event. Just to get us a little bit of visual interest on like the edges of the shape, but that's just our main flagstone shape. So I'm going to select all this stuff, highlight it all, and then grab a frame, and then name it flagstones. And now I want to add some detail to the surface of the stone itself. So I want to start getting in some of these like broader planes that you see on here. Oh, I broke my QRF. Guys, can't see what's happening, but technical difficulties. Okay, there we go. I know, I'm so sorry, everybody. Okay, so to get those shapes, we did that like cliff face looking thing last time. So we're kind of basically use the same technique for it. So we're going to start with polygon. Okay, it already has some faceting in it, I guess. I'm just going to increase the sides. And then I'm going to put in levels. I might decrease the size a bit. The scale. And then I want a multi-directional warp grayscale and clouds. Two. And I think I just want maybe 2. So I'm going to pull this back. There we go. That's what I want. The white is still back there, but I'm going to bring in the middle. Increase the intensity to like 30. What does 4 look like? Okay. Then, okay, let's bring in the tile sampler. And a gradient linear. And I'm going to multiply this on our shape so that it has like a slant, so that when they are tiled on top of each other, it's not just like a sea of like white. There's like different values in here. But I think I also might want to bring this in a little bit still. Give it a bit of a bubble. See how that works with this. And then, so an interesting tip, if you're trying to save, like, not file size, but like how heavy the graph is. This is an instance where this gradient, for example, doesn't need to be 2048 by 2048 to give me the same effect here. So if I were to go into this node and I go output size and I set it to absolute, so now it's 256 by 256, and I look at this, it looks the same as if I just did a gradient linear 2048. And that's just because this, you know, it's soft. It's a soft gradient of values anyway, and it's tiling. So we may as well save the space where we can. I could even, because this will tile, like unless I tell it otherwise over here for the tiling mode, it will tile infinitely horizontally. Even if I were to tell it, say that the width is only like 64 pixels, it still looks the same. So then we can just have a node that is significantly less heavy to just save some data or something. I don't know. Does that make sense? I'm going to plug this into the pattern input here. Reduce the amounts. I'm going to increase the scale. Maybe do size here. Size random. Cool. I'm going to do my offset again at 0.5. And a little bit of rotation random. And a little bit of position random. Might curve this way. You know what? Maybe I'll do 0.2 on the position random. Do a little bit of scale random, and then increase the scale again on this. Increase the rotation random a bit more. And yeah, that looks okay. And then I'm going to do a bit of color random here. Let's just see what that looks like so far. So I'm going to do a little bit of a warp. And I'm going to grab crystal again. Or reduce the scale. Plug that in here. Oh, actually, you know what? I want a directional warp instead. Let's try that. Yeah. So it just like pushes the shape a little bit. And then, okay, I'm going to blend their shape here. So I'm going to grab a blend. Put that in. X. But I want this to not be like, I want these planes. So if I do like an overlay, that'd make more sense. So I'm going to want these planes to not just be like blanketed uniform across the whole thing. So we're going to break it up per tile. And I'm going to use this flood fill to gradient to help me out with that. So I need a directional warp. And I need that to be the intensity input. So again, if I hit shift and drag that into the intensity input, I can change it. And then I'm going to take this and increase the intensity and just like rotate this around. And I might set this like 50 and see how that goes. So now it's breaking up per shape and also rotating the shape based on the angle. I'm going to add that here. And I'm going to see what that looks like. We'll probably have to, yeah. Cool, right? we're done. I'm going to put a histogram range on it just to reduce the range of the values that I have. .2, and then I'm also going to pull back the opacity because we just want it to be subtle. This might even be like too much for now. Yeah. There we go. Some subtle planes. So we're not done with the main stone shape yet. There's a couple other things I want to add. So in this example, on some of these stones you can see like lines or striations. So I want to add some of those. And to do that, we're going to grab an anisotropic noise. And I'm going to reduce the X amount to like 2. I'm going to warp it, the directional warp. We're going to use a lot of directional warps from here on out. Curl and noise. I'm going to pull that down a bit and reduce the scale on the purlin. On the anisotropic noise, I think I'm going to, so you can increase the Y amount like that, and I might make it a bit smoother. But reduce the range a bit. Let's see what happens if I do a slope blur on itself. So it gets a bit grainier. Increase the samples, reduce the intensity. That might work. And then, actually, let's try this. That might be a bit too noisy here, so I'm going to try this instead. So we're going to do a non-uniform blur. It's actually coming up very soon. Another directional warp very soon. Samples blades, but I might increase the asymmetry a bit for fun. And make the intensity 1. And then directional warp. Bring in a directional noise, or directional scratches. Reduce the scale. See what happens when we do that. Okay, so I also want this to be broken up based on the angle, and we already have this directional warp here. So instead of doing the same breakup thing again, I'm actually going to put a blend here before this directional warp. Put this on the bottom, this on the top, and let's try an overlay. And that might work. And so now let's see what that looks like when we plug that in here. Cool, so now we have these like little lines. I might try warping them a little bit more. Or instead, try doing this here so that they're wavier. And then try that so they're not just so straight. There we go. I just don't want them to be that straight. And then I'm going to reduce the opacity on them because they're kind of strong. There. So we just have some striations now. Okay. And then one last thing I want to do is I want to add like a little. We're going to do a little bit more variation on the stones, you know, just to increase the possibility that you'll stub your toe. And also to show you something neat. So we're going to grab a clouds 2. And just for Albertine, a directional warp. And put that into the input. And this time we're going to grab, I don't need this to change, you're welcome. Wait, I don't need this to change per angle, but I do need it to change per tile. So instead of grabbing this as our intensity input, I'm going to grab just this grayscale, random grayscale, and put it in here. And so if I increase this to like 50 or even like 80, it will tear it apart, but it's not like, and I can change the angle. So I want to show you the reason I'm doing that. This, I find, if I were to plug in the angled one, it starts to, like, it's a good effect if it's what you want, but you see how it's, like, making it streaky, and I don't want that. There's instances where that's useful, but I need, like, a very high intensity on this, and I just want it broken up per tile. So this grayscale solid color is a good way to break it up. Okay, but we're not done yet. So I'm going to put a levels on here. Levels. And then we're going to just isolate some white values and get some more contrast in there and see what this looks like now. Cool. That's pretty much what I'm looking for. And if you're following along and you want to do sort of what I'm doing, but you want your own variation on it, keep in mind that you can always do something like changing the random seed on a lot of these noises to get something a little bit different. So if I do this, I can show you. So adjusting the random seed gives you different variations. That's also, and we might not get into exposing parameters today, but we might do it next week. That's also something that you can expose so that you can get lots of variation in your materials. Okay, so I'm going to add a blend, and I'm going to subtract it. Perfect. And we'll just pull it way back. Or even, if I don't, like if I didn't want to see these, like, so there's 2 ways to go about it to reduce the intensity. There's the opacity, if we want to keep like all these underlying striations and planes. Or I could have done a histogram range. Or sorry, probably a scan would be better. And we can just change the position. So if I were to like increase the opacity to 100, but I change the position on this, oh, that's not going to work. It's not going to work, is it? I think I had it right the first time. So if we did like a blend, and I put this histogram range in here, and I did a min darken. There we go. Because I still want that black value back there. So I could do this instead. Increase this to 100, but then reduce the position or the range on it. You can tell already it's not really what I'm going to want, but yeah, if like the shape I was trying to get was something like this, to block out the shape underneath, that is a tactic that you could use. So that this became like 0.005 or something. You have it's subtle and the planes are still there. So it might not be worth it because this looks almost black. So I'm going to do it the other way. And then I'm going to adjust my levels. Oh, that's a good one. Subtle but done for the greater good. The next stay-at-home sessions are on how to craft a good pun. 1 hour of puns. Okay. Let's 0.05. I'm going to leave it like that. There we go. Yeah, so I'm not trying to like actually produce craters, just so that the light has something to do, and it looks like it's lived in the world, in the real world, and has interacted with, you know, rain and wind and that sort of thing. So I think that'll do for, holy moly, that took so long. Sorry. Okay. Done with this, like, flagstone medium shapes. Move all this up here. Now I'm going to add some pockmarks. So to do that, I'm going to grab a dirt. Dirt one, I think. I'm going to tile this a couple times. And I'm also going to create a version. It's a bit bigger. I want to levels. Isolate some of these. And these are our little ones, so I kind of want to sharpen them up. So I'm going to add a sharpen. But bring down the intensity. And in this case, I do want my directional warp to break it up. Again, per tile. So I'm going to grab our solid colors again. And I'm going to blend that. Blend. And subtract. And we're going to need to pull that way down. That'll work. But it still seems like a lot to me, so I'm going to grab a Perlin noise, because it's a nice soft noise, and I just want like a soft mask. So I'm going to try this. Yeah, and that took some of them out. And auto levels might bring in a little bit more white, so it's a bit of a better mask. And then also on the dirt, I think I want still fewer, so we're going to bring in the black. There we go. And then we're going to duplicate this whole thing. But I want this one, this bigger one, oops, that we made that's only tiled like once. Put that in the levels. I don't think I want the sharpen, so get rid of that. And then we'll have like slightly bigger ones. And I'm going to plug that in. Oh. Some slightly bigger block marks, and I'm going to make that 0.02 very light, and I might even pull this one back to like 0.05. Neat. Okay, so let's just clean this up again so we can keep everything straight. And organized. So that if we take a break and come back to it later, we won't be totally lost in the graph. I'm just select all of these, frame it, and I'm just going to hit, or call it like plus box. Add that, and then also I'm going to add some cracks really quickly. So let's do, I think there's like a scratches generator. There's a few ways to make cracks, but we're going to do it this way. So we can see more nodes. So spline number, I'm going to reduce that, and then the scale, we're going to increase it. We're going to reduce the distortion. So we're going to do that ourselves. And then the spline number, I'm going to reduce that. Rotation random, I'm going to put all the way to 1. Spline width. Random will be nice. Okay, let's start there and see what happens. So, I'm going to distort this a bit with like a crystal. And I can't believe I forgot for a second that the words were directional warp, the thing I was looking for. Okay. And this is a little bit too squiggly, so we're going to reduce the intensity and also reduce the scale, probably. There, so we can increase the intensity, but if we decrease the scale. And I might even give it like an angle. Yeah, and then we're going to do that same thing where we warp it based on, let's try with the angle first and see what happens, and then like this random grayscale angle. And if we hate it, we will use the other one. I'm not going to like how these are grouping together like this. So I might reduce the amount of splines. That'll work. And maybe if I decrease the scale on this by a lot. Like 5. Let's see what happens with 5. And then the intensity is like 20. Okay. And then also, I'm going to go to the random seed and see what that gets me. This one might be okay. And then I'm going to grab blend. And this will be in the bottom. So this is going to be intense to start, and then we'll dial it in. And subtract. So first we'll bring the opacity back. I'm also going to see what a slope blur on this looks like. And let's do crystal. Increase the samples, decrease the intensity. There we go. Min. So it gives us sort of like an uneven line. There. And then I might try like that Perlin noise as a mask again. Reduce the scale. And I'm gonna, and at the risk of doing this one too many times, do a directional warp. Break it up per tile. And then use that as a mask. Cool. We have some cracks. Sweet. Okay, so we have those shapes. And again, let's frame this up. Cracks. Might even bring those up here. And now what we need is some dirt to fill in the spaces, because these stones are looking lonely. So let's start with just clouds and Perlin noise and a blend. This is nothing as far as like a conspiracy theorist board goes. We can get so much more complicated. But I hope that like while I'm doing this, it kind of shows that when you open up a designer file and you see these big graphs full of stuff, they're very overwhelming to look at. Yeah, like they're very overwhelming to look at first, but if you break it down, it's really just like making shapes and then just like blending those things together. So if you get this, if you like focus on chunking out the process, it's way less overwhelming, and then you can start to recognize that in other people's graphs as well, which is also why it's really nice and considerate to, not just for yourself, but for other people if you intend on sharing it, to keep everything neat and tidy so that people can sort of see what's going on. Because there's no getting around the fact that you're going to end up with spaghetti everywhere eventually, and it makes things a little bit harder to read. But if you've labeled things and you start framing things up, people can start to see the process. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to multiply. Spaghetti. I mean, maybe. Yeah. You could go even, like, there's other, not to get off topic because it's already 7:15, but there's also, like, pins. Oh, that's not what I wanted. So, like, navigation pins if you wanted to, like, write a description of stuff. Let's be more descriptive. Stuff and pin. So that, and you can change the color, I think. Ah, yes. Weird. Okay. And there's also, oh, there's also comments. You could just put a comment somewhere if you wanted to label your graph. Lots of nice stuff. Okay, so dirt. Going to increase the scale on this a bit. And maybe this too. And I'm going to reduce the range on this. I'm going to have to dial this in a little bit, a couple times. So the way that we're going to blend this together is with a height blend, which is going to look at the values of the two things that we want to blend together. And if we have too much variation in our dirt height, that blend will start letting dirt sort of poke through our stones and that, and we kind of want to avoid it. So avoid that. So it's good to keep like your grout and your dirt, if you can, to have like a fairly limited range. Okay, got that, and then I'm going to blur this a little, get these little cloudy shapes, and then I want to blend it with itself. A little. Oh wait, I want this the other way around. So I want this in the foreground. There we go. See how that goes. And then like a little bit of pebbliness maybe. So we'll grab a dirt. This on top. I need to blend first. And then bring that way down. You could actually see what I'm doing here. I might blur this a little. So blur high quality grayscale. Just a little. And I'm also going to bring that down. So I don't want them, like, tons of them. I just, yeah, okay. So that'll work. So now we have the dirt, and we're going to grab the hype blend. So this is going to go on top. Dirt will go on the bottom. And plug that in. So we need to increase the contrast and then play with the offset. So we're getting a little bit of that thing I was talking about. We decrease the contrast a little bit. And I'm going to put another histogram range here. Yeah. Okay, let's try. So now that we've like reduced the range, bring it up a little bit more. Let's see what happens when we decrease that offset again. There we go. Reduce the range on the clouds. Get rid of some of that for me. And cool. Reduce the range again. I keep dialing this in until I get something that I want, because I still want it to be able to spill over a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. So some of that's happening because we've got these angles on the rocks, so I might actually just reduce. Oh yeah, that's quite a bit actually. That's why that's happening. So I'm going to go back here. Bring some of those rocks back. There we go. Now they're not getting buried so early. We're just getting like the edges of them. And I sort of prefer the look of the slant to the just having like the stones that are inset. So I might see if now I can get away with a little bit more. of like just edges of them getting buried instead of like the centers of them. Yeah, that's fine with me. Cool. So now we've got our dirt, but I think our dirt could use some pebbles. So we're going to make those now. So there's, to do that, I want to make like a little separate like node graph or utility node, something that you can reuse in other projects. So before I do that, let's just frame this up, call it dirt. And also, just so that we know where to find this later, I'm going to frame this all by itself and just say height blend. Or dirt height blend, so we know that. Okay, so let's make some little pebbles. Yeah, so let's grab a tile generator, and we want a paraboloid, and we just want it to be a 2 by 2. And then we're going to grab the cells, and blend it. And then we're going to do a subtract. But we're going to reduce the scale on the cells. And then reduce the opacity. So we start to get this faceting. Yeah, like that. I'm going to put an auto levels on it so I get all my values back. Yeah, so I don't know if I explained that properly, but like the auto levels will make sure that you have like the full range of black to white. So if you've been like manipulating nodes and colors and you feel like you've got like something, like when you're trying to build shapes, you don't always want to, until the end, you don't want to have like only like middle gray values. You might want the full range to play with. So you can throw in auto levels on something to bring those back. I'm going to try a slope blur and a curl and noise. And increase the samples and the intensity. Yeah, 2. And let's take a look where we're at so far with this. So I might add, this might be unnecessary, but let's add a little bit of like surface detail breakup with a multi-directional warp. The reason I say that it might not be necessary is because these things are going to be super tiny, so we're not really going to see them very much. But again, like I said, the idea is that like you make this and then you potentially can reuse it in other scenarios, so it might be helpful to have like a little bit of noise or something in it. So just a little bit. And then we're going to do another curl and noise and a blend. I'm going to do a random seed maybe, and then reduce the scale. And do a multiply. Yeah. To sort of like mess with the shape some more. I just want to see what subtract does. Subtract's kind of interesting. I don't know how pebbly this one looks. Let's play with the random seed again. Sorry, just trying to make up my mind on either subtract or, yeah, let's do subtract. So I've got these little stone shapes. And these just sort of look like they're cut off by the cylinder. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a base. And to do that, first I'm going to grab a histogram scan and a bevel and a blend. Okay, so something to spell. I'm going to show you the wrong way first, like a mistake that I've made a few times, where I tried to bevel this just like this, and put it like really low and then set this to multiply. And it was doing something weird and I couldn't really figure out what it was, and when I played with this I realized what was happening is it was like beveling these values in the middle. So what I need to do first is do a histogram scan, increase the position on this so I just get like a mask of it, of like the full shape, plug that into the bevel, and now if I set this to 0.1, I actually want it, because it's beveling out, I'm going to do a negative bevel, 0.01, and then pull that all the way up, and you see that little lip there. And I'm going to turn on the smoothing, and maybe 0.4. Yeah, that's too much. Too much smoothing or too much bevel? Let's see. Yeah, too much bevel. Okay. That'll work. Yeah. Just to sort of make it look like it's coming off of the ground, not just being cut off. Okay, so I'm going to plug this back in, because if we want to make this into a utility node, I just wanted to show you that there's two ways that you can do this. So we could have just right-clicked on our package and created a new graph, or, sorry, it's freaking me out that I haven't saved this yet, so just so that I don't ruin this thing for us and have this crash all of a sudden, let's save. I'm going to save it as flagstone. Oh, sorry, I don't know why I brought this over here. Flagstone, and hit save. So now we're covered. Yeah, I'm sorry that I left that so long before I saved that. We were living a risky life. Okay, so select all of these nodes when you're ready. Right click, and we can create graph from selection. It'll tell us how many nodes we have selected. When I do that, we can give it a name. So I'm going to name it Pebbles. Hit OK. And now it makes this graph for us. So we can select all of these, just delete them out of our graph. And now we see our pebbles alone in a graph here. But you'll notice it doesn't have any output. So now we're going to do that. So transform 4 times. And we're going to plug it into this one. If you go to the offset, I believe it is negative 0.25. And then we'll times this by 2 so you can see it better. But so times it by 2 to make it twice as big. Negative 2.5, and then we want it to go this way. So it's also another negative 0.25. We'll plug this one in, and it's going to be times 2, negative 0.25. Nope. 25, and then negative 0.25 should give us that corner. And then we're going to do the bottom left. So times 2, negative 0.25, and 0.25. And then finally, times 2, 0.25, 0.25. Yeah. Cool. So those are done. And then we just need to give them some outputs. So create an output here. We're going to name it rock 01. And then we'll give it a label of rock 01. I'm going to copy that so I don't have to do it every time. And then another output, and this one will be rock 02. I'll show you the difference between these in a second. Another output for 03 and 03. And finally, rock 04 and rock 04. Okay. So the names that we're giving it, label is the label that it's going to show on the node, and then also in the properties tab, like if you were to expose this parameter or something like that, that's the label for it. But this identifier is for substance, so you can see now all of our outputs have this rock underscore 01, 2, 3, 4. So now, when we go into Flagstone, we can drag our pebbles in here, and we've made a little node. And now, with this utility node that we've made, we can tile around our pebbles with a tile sampler. Pattern input. And once you do pattern input, it gives you this pattern input number. And we're going to increase that to 4 because we have 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh. I set that to 6. Interesting. Okay. So we have that. And this we're going to increase by a lot. But first, let's go to size scale. Yeah, let's do size random, so we can introduce a little bit more variation. There, scale random, a little bit of that. But we'll increase the scale because we don't want them to be super far apart. We're going to do that position jitter, so 0.1. This seems okay. Take the scale down to 1.5 or 1.4. Offset is 0.5. We're going to do a rotation random. We could do a tiny bit of a color random, I guess. And now we're going to tile this like crazy. So like 70 by 70. Lots of tiny little pebbles. We can also do a mask random. And one other thing that I want, so I'm going to layer this on top of my dirt, maybe before this height, histogram range. Let's try it before that. I'm going to do a max lighten. But I don't want these pebbles to show up. Like, I want it to be higher than the dirt, but I don't want to worry about them being, like, showing up and scattering over top of the stones. So to take care of that, two things. One, to control some of this, we can put histogram range on those. So we can adjust, or actually, sorry, let's do a levels. And so we can like reduce the white point on that. But also, like, I mean, if you want to scatter the stones there, you can do that. But if you wanted to just, like, I might want to just make sure that they're only showing up in the grout more or less. So what I can do is grab this as a mask. Let's do, yeah, I'm going to duplicate this. Well, let's duplicate this one. And I'm also going to, yeah, duplicate that, and then we're going to put it into the mask map input. And then we have to go all the way to the bottom where our mask random was. And there's this mask map threshold, so it's talking about this. And we can increase that, but it's masking out this here. So we could either put an invert grayscale here, or there's this button right here for mask map invert. And now they're only showing up where the grout is. But we don't have to put it all the way. Like if we reduce the threshold, they scatter a little bit more. And also if I wanted them to spill like a tiny bit, I put a blur high quality grayscale here. Just so that, and maybe even in auto levels, let's see. So that they sort of like spill over a little bit, but not a lot. And I'm going to just reduce that a little bit more again. Instead of max lighten, I might do add. Yeah, add. And then pull in the white of it a little bit. Still a lot. I might make these even smaller. And increase the mask random. And scale. Nope. What did I just do? Okay, 1.2. 1. I'm going to do a little bit more position jitter on these. They're looking a little too uniform to me. Position random point 0.3. Yeah, that'll work for now. Okay, so I'm going to make this part of the dirt here. That is our flagstones. We carved in the shape, got the pocks and cracks, the dirt, and some stones. yeah, if we have time next time, we'll take a look at making some foliage to put in between. But I want to be able to get to doing roughness and color with you, which is really fun. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there. And that'll give us some time to go over some questions. Does anyone have any questions about what we went over or something that they missed? Okay. Oh, good. I'm glad. Do I ever get lost in my own graphs? I mean, absolutely. It depends on how long it's been. So that's why, like, it's good to, like, finish a thought and then frame it up and, like, leave a note. But yeah, I have. Like, there's times that I'm working on something and I don't know what I'm doing yet. Like, I'm trying to work out how to make a particular shape. And so I might have, like, 10 different, like, experiments going on, and that starts to get really confusing. So the sooner that you can get yourself organized, the better. I am very guilty of not doing that from the very beginning, so I totally get it. But yeah, it happens. Yeah, no problem. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm glad. I hope it's been helpful, or that it's like given you some techniques that you can use in your own stuff. So just sort of the point. Aw. When should we lower the scale of a node? Oh, I see. Yeah, like I didn't do much of that. So there's a couple of. Sorry, I keep clicking like that. It's a bad habit. So here I did it with the gradient linear because I don't need it to be like a full 2048 by 2048 image to give me a gradient like that. I could like there's other instances where I might do that if I want to like intentionally reduce the resolution of something. So if I thought that like this clouds 2 was too noisy and I wanted it to be softer, like I was using that Perla noise because it's so soft. If I reduced this to like 256, suddenly that noise becomes much softer. That might not even be giving me that. Yeah, so you can see here. So instead of having to put like a blur on something, you can just reduce the output size of a node. That's good. Yeah. It's a lot different doing something in real time. Because I want to be able to do it at a pace where you can follow along, but I find that like in making materials, there's so much going back and forth and seeing if something works and trying out new things. And I did really want you to be able to see that part of the process, because I find it can be misleading when you see some tutorials where the person has it all figured out. Sort of like watching I don't know if it's exactly the same, but like watching a speed painting or something like that, you sort of lose the effect or like of like how much time it actually takes someone or like some of the decisions that they're making. So I wanted you to be able to see that like yeah, like Bob Ross, there's happy accidents and you can try something out and it doesn't work, or try something out and it gives you an unexpected effect that's better than what you were looking for. So yeah. Like full disclosure, I ran through this already. So even then, even though there were certain things that I wasn't sure about, I've already done it. And it's really hard to make the same thing twice because you're in a different mood. You might make different decisions every day. But yeah, even here, like having run through it once, there's still a lot of like on the fly decision making that's happening. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Do a little bit of the scale, got that. Talked about the process. Yeah, and then if the video gets uploaded and you have any questions, I'm not super active on social media, but if you send me like a DM through Twitter or something like that, I'll check it and I'd be happy to answer questions there too if you have them while you're working your way through the videos. Okay, well, if there's no other questions and nothing else that you want me to cover before I dip out, oh, how can they find me online? Brenna Blackman, so Brenna, and then Blackman is my last name, MAN, because there is a black mun out there who is another person that exists, but it's not me. So you can, yeah, I'm Brenna Blackman on Twitter, and I'm also Brenna Blackman on Instagram. Yeah. Or brennablackman.art. I have two of them because I thought maybe I might handle two of them, but I'm still not active. So, yeah. Thanks for the apple. I am kind of hungry. Cool. All right. Well, I'll see you guys next week. And I'll get this passed off so that they can upload it on YouTube. And we'll do some color and roughness next week. Thank you.